Good morning and welcome to everybody to the second PASA webinar. And today we have a special guest, Tony Silva, who will be presenting on parrot breeding and hand rearing. We'd like to give a special welcome to our viewers from overseas, our local and our PASA members, and obviously Tony, who's made the effort to be here. And then, thank you very much for that. Before we kick off, Tony, I would like to just introduce a little special treat that we have today. We have a book of Tony's that's going to be on a little special raffle. All you have to do to enter this lucky draw is going to be to hashtag the word PASA, P-A-S-A in lowercase, for the Parrot Breeders Association of Southern Africa. Hashtag that on while you're busy watching. And then at the end of the show, we will have a automated draw, and then you will win that lovely book. Tony, welcome. Thank you for your time and your effort. And if you maybe just want to have a word on this great book that you have written for us.
So the first edition was published in 1992. It took me from 1992 to 2018 to revise it because aviculture has changed so much. What we knew in the 1990s has morphed into much more modern thinking. Hand rearing formulas are now available commercially worldwide. There's many more models of incubators. Many more species have become available to aviculture. I never thought I would see that as a possibility, but it is a possibility. And aviculture has shifted from being the U.S., Europe, and South Africa being the center of the aviculture universe, to Asia. Asia is the next growth area, and it is the interest in Vietnam and Thailand and India and Pakistan is amazing. It is just amazing. They have a passion, and that passion has exploded.
Great. Thank you very much. So please, people, put in a little effort there. Hashtag PASA, P-A-S-A in lowercase, and you stand a chance to win this great book. Thank you very much, Tony. So if I may just quickly introduce Tony, I don't think that you really need much of an introduction worldwide in terms of the parrots. If we just put on that first slide, we'd just like to, a little bit of background on Tony. As you can see, he's been in the industry. He's got 40 years plus of experience in the parroting industry. The next one, Yaku. So Tony, there you can see, fourth generation aviculturist. He has been, if I look at my notes as well, Tony was born in 1960 in Cuba. At the age of 9, started with parrots. At the age of 10, he discovered macaws. What's very interesting and alluding to the book here, at the age of 16, started writing articles on parrots. At the age of 20, he published his first book. What I also found in the archives of the internet, Tony, was that you've published a book on fish. Is that correct?
Yes. So I have multiple passions. Obviously, birds, fish. I've traveled throughout the Amazon to not only look at birds, but also tropical fish, and then my third passion are primates.
Very interesting. In 1981, you received the Silver Avi Award from the AFA for breeding the first slenderbill conures in the US, or in captivity. In 86, you became the vice regional president of AFA, and in 89 to 92, you were the curator of Parrots at Loro Parque.
Yes.
Can you give us a little bit of background just on Loro Parque and your time?
I came to Loro Parque at a point where aviculture was just beginning to explode. It was what the late Don Wells called an everyday Christmas. Many new species were coming on the scene. We knew very little about most of them, so it was a challenge. It was an exciting time where we were able to breed for the first time many species, many rare lorikeets, conures, some new subspecies, of Amazons that had not been in aviculture. So it was an exciting time that I never thought would be repeated, and then it's repeating itself in Asia.
Interesting fact, Tony. You've bred 82% of parrot species, and you've studied 87% of them in their natural habitat. And if we have a look and think that there are 387 odd species, that puts the total at 317 that you've bred and 336 that you've studied in their natural habitat. That it must be an experience on its own.
So part of it was obviously in my collection, part of it was at Loro Parque, and then part of it was in collections that I consulted to. So it was multiple species at multiple times. I've been to 103 countries. I've caught every imaginable tropical disease. I've had malaria twice. So, I've paid the price. I'm paying it again now with a rhinovirus that followed a respiratory infection from doing crazy things.
Getting around.
Yes.
Great. Thank you very much, Tony. And yeah, I think that sums up just as an introduction. And we just want to say thank you for your time this morning. And we look forward to hearing from you and your inputs. We will have a question session towards the end. But then we'll hand over to Tony. We've got the slides on. You just give us the heads up as to move on to the next slide. Thank you very much.
So I would like to start by thanking everyone for connecting, for being on here. I think the fact that we have a group of people from across the globe says that aviculture is international. It sees no country boundary, no religious boundary, no ethnic boundary. Aviculture is practiced in every country of the world. And for the first time, it seems like the internet has brought many of us together. On a daily basis, I get messages from 15, 20 countries asking for information. So it is very international. I thank everyone for participating this morning. And as they say, let's dive in. Next. So my main collection is in South Florida. It is maintained outdoors in a semi-tropical environment. There's lots of trees, lots of plants. I like orchids and I like palm trees. So it allowed me to blend multiple hobbies. I was allowed to landscape a facility and then insert cages and aviaries in between for many of the species that I keep and breed. Next. We as with anything in life, you evolve as things come your way or as changes occur. We had a massive hurricane go through South Florida, and the birds were fine. We took all the necessary measures, but the impact on native wildlife was brutal. We found injured birds, native birds, injured squirrels. So what I did was to establish a small clinic where we could handle and at least keep these animals alive. We have a very good structure. Everything is hurricane proof. So it allowed us to provide help for not only our birds and local collections, but also some of the native species. Next. The incubation rooms, we have 2 incubation rooms and hand rearing rooms. So the incubation rooms one is in my office for extremely delicate birds, and then I have a separate room that is elsewhere, and then I have 2 hand rearing rooms. One is used for chicks that have been fed at some point by the parents up until a certain age, and then also another room for eggs that have been artificially incubated. We just find that chicks that are born in an incubator are immune naive. They've not experienced many of the pathogens that the parents have. and that they build up an immunity to. So keeping them separate is very important. We know that many breeding parrots, when they're about to breed or have already or have chicks in the nest, will eat droppings as a means of absorbing additional vitamins. So we don't want that contamination. We want to keep them very separate. Next. So since the turn of the century, aviculture has evolved very rapidly. There's been a huge focus on mutations and on hybrids, particularly in pet marketed countries, and then finally in breeding many new species. Next. When I entered aviculture, I was a kid. Obviously, that did not make me well accepted because most of the old timers thought I was too young. I wasn't smart enough. So I had to come and start from zero. I was very grateful that my family supported my hobbies, and they allowed me to travel. And that travel permitted me to think outside the box and to develop many things on my own because I had no guidance. In this case, for example, you see a nest on the right that duplicates what would happen in a termite mound, arboreal termitaria that's commonly used by conures for nesting. They make an opening, they tunnel up, around, and then at the end of that tunnel, they go down and then have a nesting chamber. So that nest box duplicates that. And it was what allowed me to breed some of these conures that are so difficult to induce to nest, even though they're very common. Next. And I've always thought of looking and applying what we find in the field. So I started seeing that many conures uh, nested in aberrant locations. In Florida, for example, the mitred conures tunnel up through vents in a roof and then nest. So that's what the nest box on the left duplicates. And the one on the right shows a thinning center that duplicates some of the palm trees that have a bulge and then a narrow top and then a bulge. So the idea is they would dig in, tunnel down through a very narrow chamber to a larger base where they could nest. And those two nest box types have really revolutionized the breeding of some of these conures. Next. Um, the standard in aviculture is to add shavings to a nest, but when you look at wild parrots, nobody does that for them. So they have to chew, and that chewing process um, brings the pair together, strengthens the bond, reduces aggression in species like cockatoos, and the darkness induces the gonads, the testes in the male and the ovary in the female to enlarge and become stimulated. So when you add wood, you keep them together, they work together, you reduce aggression, and you induce the success for breeding. Next. So I look at artificial incubation as a tool that can be used to both um, save eggs that would otherwise fail or to boost production. And that's basically what I'm showing there. Damaged eggs that would never have hatched had they not been artificially incubated. Next. Eggs can be removed at any stage of development. Next. And if they're damaged, they should be repaired. I like a wood glue, and then you can apply some wood glue and tissue, and then more wood glue till you create a replacement shell. It can be a fairly sterile environment, and it works. Next. Next. So if we can go back, okay, that's the next one. When many of these eggs are damaged or they have bubbles or the parents are septic. I have found that piperacillin is one of the only antibiotics that works, and you would inject the air cell using the dose described there, and you would do it at 14, 18, and 22 days. And what you basically do is you take a 26 gauge needle, and you just rotate it until you drill a hole into the air cell. You apply the minute amount of antibiotics, you pull it out, and then you would seal the opening. Next. If we can go back to, I think we missed one, the previous one. So that's that process. No, next. No, we're going too many. Next. That one. So it shows the would previous, please. Previous. There. So that shows the process of injecting an egg. It you don't save all of them, but you can save a large percentage. It obviously requires very close monitoring of the egg for it to be successful. Next. Next. Oh, there we go. Leave it there, please. So these are incubation parameters that I use for all species. I use an orchid in the room simply because I don't have time to weigh every single egg. I focus on problem eggs or eggs that have been repaired. But if I look at the orchid and the terminal bud, the last flower that's emerging, dry, humidity has dropped to a critical level. If it begins to prosper, then humidity is correct, and I don't do anything. I try to have outside components that can help me always be much more successful in my and then hand rearing. Next. So with eggs, problems can arise at any stage of incubation. And, that's why we monitor. We always want to hatch eggs in a separate unit. You don't want a chick hatching and defecating in an incubator full of eggs. And you don't want also the feces covering the shell of some of these eggs that are still in process. So I hatch them separately and I monitor them closely. Normally, when an egg is hatching, I look at it 3 times a day. Next. Any egg that fails to hatch is necropsied. Hafet from Puerto Rican Parrot Project showed me how to do egg necropsies, and it is a very successful procedure. It often has given me insight into pairs that look perfect, that reproduce, but whose eggs die. And that's because they had some sort of bacterial issue. So I've been able to culture it in the chick and then go back and rectify the problem in the adults. Next. I started, as you had mentioned, very, very early. This is the hyacinth macaw chick that I was rearing in '79. So many years have passed since then. And I will tell you that every day I realize that I know less today than I did yesterday, because the animals, the birds, teach us things every day. There's people that read 2 articles and have become internet experts. I believe that you need a lot of experience and you need to constantly look at your birds, because they will teach you new things. And that knowledge, when applied, will allow you to be more successful. In fact, probably the best lesson I ever had was that year in 1979, when I went to visit Ramon Nogel, who was a very successful Amazon breeder. And I went there and I thought, this is crazy. He was a Kardecian spiritualist priest who was a medium. And I went to church the one night with him, and these spirits are talking to people. And I thought, man, I got to get out of here. This is crazy. And the next morning he said, come, let me show you the birds. And as we walked around, he said, the birds will talk to you. Listen. I thought, this is more wacky stuff. I get back home, and my grandfather was a highly educated man, and I discussed it, and he said, how did it go? And I explained it. And he said, maybe you're being too literal. Maybe you think that they're going to use words. Maybe it's actions, it's sounds, it's behavior. And that lit a bulb in my mind, and I have applied that principle ever since. The animals communicate. We need to figure out how they communicate with us. Next. So, the time that I started in aviculture, there was really no knowledge. The hand rearing formula it was used was monkey chow with peanut butter. Some added oatmeal, some added baby food. It was a hodgepodge of things. But nobody knew if what we were giving them was correct. So I decided to embark on one of my first big field projects. And I traveled to Argentina. Next. I hired 3 climbers, and they would climb the nests. They would lower the chicks to me. I would take crop contents. I would send them to a friend that ran a lab in the US, and he would analyze the crop contents for fat, for protein, etc. That gave me a huge insight into what was happening. Next. So the chicks were removed twice weekly. I weighed, I measured them, and then they were returned to the nest. Next. So to make a very long story short, you'll see there what sites I visited, how many chicks were collected or examined and then returned, and the countries. The final answer was that fat was far more important than we had ever thought. That with the proper fat, the birds would emulate um, how they were evolving in nature. Without fat, they would be thin, and that would have an impact on reproductive success once they matured. Next. So I think that's a classic example there. Hold on, please. I have a text message that I need to send someone. My dogs are in here, and they will start barking for attention, so I need to make sure that they don't disturb us. So if we look at that, we see the results of a 10% hand rearing, a 10% fat on the right, 16% fat on the left. The chick on the left copies what would happen in nature. The chick on the right is stunted. Next. So, just to finalize that, it's important that you have fat in the formula. I always believe that you need to prepare before the breeding season. I constantly get messages from people saying, my birds just laid, they started to break the eggs, I have them in my hand, what do I do? Well, in many cases, it's too late. If you don't have an incubator, if you don't have an incubator running, if you don't have an incubator that's calibrated, you will fail. So I always tell people, be ready. Have incubators that never shut off. Have brooders that are never shut off. We never turn our incubators off. We find, in fact, that when we turn them on and off, that some of them lose calibration. So it's very important to keep them running. Next. So the reason that I stress brooders and incubators is you don't know when problems are going to start. This particular rose-breasted cockatoo, I came home from traveling overseas, and this is what I found. Had a brooder not been available to warm the chick up and then to give it fluids, we would have lost it. I also always keep a bottle of fluids in an incubator so that it is warm and I can use it instantly. I don't have to worry about warming it in case a chick needs fluids. Next. So hand rearing has been beat up. In fact, there are many proposals. The craziest one is from the Netherlands where you can't hand rear. Hand rearing can save the lives of many chicks. I don't subscribe to the thinking that if you hand rear a bird, it will pluck, it will chew itself, it will be worthless for breeding. It's how you hand rear that you will have success. It's not hand rearing. Next. So when a chick hatches with problems, you need to take action. I have found that if a chick hatches with an unretracted egg yolk, that we tie it with dental floss. We don't sever it, and then we apply sugar to it. Next, the sugar has multiple functions. One, it dries the yolk, and secondly, it sterilizes. It's very important that you use cane sugar, which is bleached in the process, or you will not have the same success. You will not be successful with beet sugar. It has to be white cane sugar, and it dries. It dries the area very quickly, and it inhibits bacterial growth. Next, you know, there you see it. It's clearly how it was successful, and it was the same chick as in the previous image. Next. So I find that Clostridium is a growing problem. People constantly tell me my chick is all bloated. It's not well, or it's very pale. We always need to look at Clostridium. It is a problem in Florida when we automatically and prophylactically um, treat them for Clostridium constantly. We do it once a month on all chicks. We do it prophylactically, and we've not had any more problems. This is a worldwide issue. I would also like to pause and say that new aviculturists think that they can keep their birds dirty, never clean them. They think that you put a nest on a pair of birds and they will breed tomorrow. It doesn't work that way. You need to, one, maintain hygiene. If you don't maintain hygiene, you will fail. I constantly, daily get messages from people saying, my birds are sick. What do I do? And when I ask them, well, what are you doing? Can you send a picture? Feces up to the perch, tiny cages. And then when you ask them further questions, oh, I bought the pair 2 weeks ago. I want them to breed. You need to have patience. Parrots are not chickens. If they were chickens, they would be the same price. They're not. So we need to focus on ensuring that we provide the proper conditions, the proper nest, and have patience. If you don't have patience, you will fail. Next. Pseudomonas is a second common problem, and it's basically chicks that twist their neck, that bend it backwards. Um, their legs become stiff. If we have proper hygiene, we avoid this problem. And proper hygiene means cleaning surfaces, cleaning incubators, cleaning tools, disinfecting them, washing hands. I have a consulting business, and I went to see a gentleman in the Middle East who had a very large collection and was having about 70% mortality. And I walked into the nursery, and he said, is this is how we hand rear. I looked at his nails and thought, hell, I could grow, a plant with the dirt under his nails. So I had him cultured, and we grew every pathogen imaginable. So he was contaminating the chicks. He would stick his fingers in the formula to check for temperature, would inoculate a rich formula, and then kill the chicks. Next. We have found that we try not to use antibiotics. If we have a slow crop, we'll have a technique that we'll discuss later. And if we need to inject chicks, I have found that chicks as young as 3 days can be injected. You inject it subcutaneously right under the skin, and you use alternate sides. In that particular chick, it was a kike that had contracted Klebsiella from the parents, and it was brought into the nursery. We took cultures, and then I immediately started prophylactic antibiotics And sure enough, it was very successful. We saved the chick. Next. So hand rearing is a tool that can increase success significantly, or it can be a nightmare. Some people say, well, I can only feed my baby in the morning before I go to work and at night when I come home. Then hand rearing is not for you. They require food when they're small throughout the day. As they approach weaning, yes, you can get away with that. Not when they're small. Next. Well, there are many tools that we can use for hand rearing. I like to start a spoon, a stainless steel gavage needle, and then revert back to a spoon at least once a day during the weaning process. And I'll explain why later. Next. We don't mix chicks that are parent reared and incubator hatch, as I said before. We don't want the naive chicks that are hatched in an incubator catching some disease from those that came from the parents. Next. Learning proper formula preparation is key. Not all of them are the same. Some, if you don't mix them right, they become lumpy and similar to wallpaper glue. So read the instructions. Most of the calls and messages that I get are simply because people don't want to read. They want somebody else to solve their problems. And, we need to prepare. I have a lot of experience, but I learn something new every day. And I read. I am constantly researching because every day somebody comes up with something new or something that applies, or there are changes. There are changes to the formula, new ingredients are removed. All of these can have an impact. Read, be informed of what you use and why you're using it. Next. So, commercial formulas can be the base for all species with some modifications. Next. We monitor. Let me go back. I don't think I said enough about the previous one. So we use commercial formula as the basis, and then I add steamed vegetables and chopped nuts for palm cockatoos. I add chopped nuts for golden conures and hyacinth macaws, and we start adding these elements as early as 5 days on. If we do not, these chicks tend to have problems. So we use one basic formula and we just vary it. If it's lorikeets, we'll add some pureed sweet potato, yellow sweet potato, American sweet potato. I try not to use too much fruit. Parrots have not evolved to digest the sugars in fruit. They don't do well. So I focus more on vegetables. I have yet to see a parrot, for example, in Central America, attack a ripe banana. They always attack green bananas. So we can't, we avoid sweet fruits. Go ahead, please. Next. So the correct temperature is 40 degrees Celsius. Could you hold on 1 second, please?
Sorry about that. We'll
Sorry
have a
about
quick.
that.
You back, Tony?
No. Yes, it was just
Good
1
stuff.
second. Okay, next. So crop burns, if you don't check the temperature, if you microwave, if you use boiling water, you must check the temperature, and you must agitate the formula. If you microwave, you wait a few seconds, you check the temperature, because when you microwave, the temperature continues to increase after you take it out. So make sure that you check the temperature. Crop burns are painful. They will kill chicks. They will cause an opening through. And then, many people say, well, I don't have a vet. Can I do it? No, you need to have this professionally done. If you would have been careful, you would not have experienced this problem. Next. That's a typical crop burn. I was doing some consulting work, and I walked in, and the guy was using his finger to check temperature. I learned when I was a kid, my dad owned a restaurant, and he had a cook that would stick his fingers in oil, hot oil that was frying things, and never get burned. So, use a digital thermometer, you agitate well, you get a surface reading. If it's 40 degrees Celsius, you feed it. If it's cold, they may not accept it. And if it's beyond that, you may cause crop burns. Next. Some breeders, and I don't know where this comes from, will feed fluids, will feed lactated ringers, will wait 24 hours. I don't know where this comes from. Every newly hatched parrot chick that I have encountered in nature has been fed almost immediately on hatching by the parents. They don't wait. They don't give them fluids. They give them basically mush. So we feed from the minute the chick hatches. We don't wait for the first feces. We don't wait 24 hours. All we're doing is delaying the development process. Next. um, I believe the chick should be fed, and that's a spoon. We bend the spoon slightly upwards, and it works well. Next. We keep the crop full throughout the day. The parents don't let the crop empty in nature. I don't in captivity. When people tell me, oh, but if I do that, I have a slow crop, then there's a management issue. You're failing somewhere because it's not normal. That crop is like a furnace. You keep it stoked, you keep wood in it at all times so that it is fired up. You don't let that furnace shut off and then heat it up again. So we feed throughout the day, we allow them to empty at night. Next. The crop that hangs too much can be another problem. We want to always brace it up and keep it high so that if it doesn't sag, if it sags, then you will have yeast, you'll have digestive problems, etc. Next. We weigh chicks. When we first breed a species, we try to weigh 10 youngsters of that species, and then we have that as a database. Much of that information has found itself in my books. And what I do is I just casually weigh chicks to make sure they're on target, and then refer back to that scale. It gives me some variance. Next. We keep chicks warm. A common problem is people will hatch an egg at 37.4 Celsius, and then they'll come back and say, "Oh, I put the chick at 32 degrees. It's not digesting. It's dying." Well, you can't drop the temperature. The temperature under the parents would be the same as incubation. So we start them off at 37, and we slowly lower it. We lower it when they begin to pant, and then we don't. We tend to move chicks in batches. So we put a group together, and then we move that group next and next and next. Go ahead, please. Next. If the chick has issues, we use oxygen. If it is aspirated, if it is stressed, we use oxygen. When a chick aspirates, oxygen can be a big difference between failure or success. Next. We monitor. I am a Virgo. I am the most anal person you will ever want to meet. I constantly want answers. So we were experiencing almost absolute mortality in day-old kikes. And what I did is I installed cameras. Lo and behold, the cameras started showing us the problem. Next. So the chicks would be fed, and then they would flip themselves on their back and they would aspirate. This was evident in a camera. That camera alerted me of the problem. We put them in small coffee cups. where they wouldn't flip on their backs for the first week or so, and then the problem was resolved. We didn't lose any more kikes. So you need to monitor what goes on, because sometimes what we see when we're there is not what happens after we're not there. Next. Understand the behaviors of various species. Macaws will flip on their backs. If you suddenly walk into a dark room and flip on the lights, leave a night light on. It will reduce this flipping on their backs when you come in. And what we do is we keep the incubators dark, but we've got a small night light where they can sense that we're coming in. I always talk when I come into the nursery, so they expect me entering. Next. We understand some chicks are fed on their backs. When a chick eats and flips on its back, it's not that there's something wrong with it, it's that it's part of its natural behavior, such as in African parrots and in kikes, for example. Next. Hygiene. This person wanted to know why her birds were dying. She was losing 50%. It didn't take a genius to figure it out. And I recently, for example, got really, really angry when I was helping a person rear palm cockatoo. And I finally asked him for photos, and the nest and the brooder was literally wallowing in fecal matter. And he said, well, I was told by my vet that you only clean them every 7 days. My response was, send that vet back to school. And then rather than saying, thank you, I will learn and save the chick, he began arguing with me. Well, in the wild, you cannot compare the wild with captivity. In captivity, birds are exposed to many more diseases. We have a totally artificial environment, and we're not transferring immunities. These naive chicks will not survive a filthy brooder. So, practice hygiene. It will save you a lot of anguish, and it will allow the animals to stay far healthier. Next. Understand that some species have issues. Megabacteria in cockatiels, PBFD in Asiatic parakeets. There's a new strain that's going around that is affecting adult birds. Circle virus PBFD was only initially impacting youngsters. I recently, I'm dealing with a case where I had two Amazons in my care in the 1970s. They were subsequently taken back by the owner, who moved overseas. And then the birds moved through several collections. The last collection placed them in quarantine with some ringnecks. And imagine 40-year-old birds contracted PBFD, and they're naked. We need to understand the risks. And, the constant messages that I get, please give me a medicine. Viruses aren't necessarily treated with medicines. They're handled by testing, by excluding infectious animals, not by mixing them into the nursery and then expecting some miracle. There are two diseases that aviculture needs to fund, and we need answers for. One is PDD, and the other one is circle virus / PBFD. Next. Polyoma is also a common problem. It's very common in Asiatic parakeets, and they basically begin to develop hematomas. It's common in cockatiels. It's common in budgies. When you have this problem, it isn't, give me some medicine and I will take care of it. It's removing the infectious birds from the collection, practicing proper hygiene, understanding that many of these viruses can live in dust, in air conditioning and heating units, that they will live on surfaces for a long time, for a very long time. I consulted a collection in Europe that was breeding black cockatoos, and they started losing them all from PPFD. And they said, yeah, but we're incubating, we're practicing. And I took environmental swabs of the vents, and sure enough, we came up with a disease. So it was getting spread throughout the facility and the collection. Next. We need to recognize stunting and whether it's bacterial or fungal related. You know, a chick that's got a huge head and a little body is not healthy. They grow proportionately. Next. I mentioned earlier how we deal with crop stasis. The first is that we take papaya. It's a little bit of papaya, fruit, pulp, the seeds, Pedialyte. We grind this up, and this is what we give the chicks. It will help significantly with slow crops. What you do then is you slowly, after the crop is moving normally, you begin to add formula in small increments. So you would add 20, 40, 50, 60, 80, 100% over several feedings. This works really well because the papaya seeds have and work very well, and the chicks easily digest it. Next. You know, yeast is a common problem in some species. Don't wait until the bird's mouth is full of mucus and slimy to deal with it. Look at your birds before you feed. Wipe their mouths after you feed. A little bit of extra attention can bring about a lot of success. Next. If you have spraddle legs, I like the procedure on the right, which is basically you take a sponge, you push the feet through, because the sponge provides some support, and it makes the process for the chick easier. Normally just a few days, and it will correct itself. Next. Deviated crop, where the deviated beak, where the top beak goes into the lower beak. You can fix it with Next by gluing a straw to the upper mandible.
Okay, it looks like we've just lost signal there with Tony. So just give us 1 second to come back, to get him back there. In the meantime, while we're waiting for that, please make sure that you hashtag PASA to enter the competition for that book of Tony's. Here's a good example, or here is a sample of the book. If you can see it, brilliant read, great information. As Tony said, a lot of the stuff he has studied himself and spent a lot of time in compiling that for us. It is a big help. So yeah, as soon as Tony's back on, then we will get him going again. So maybe we can have a look. Remember, post a few questions on the comments, and then we will give you an opportunity, or give Tony an opportunity to answer some of those. Depending on time, we'll take 10 or 15 questions, and depending on how long the response of that is. So thank you very much. Can I take this opportunity in the meantime while we're waiting for Tony? There you're back, Tony.
Not sure what happened.
No problem. Just want to, while you get your breath there, can we just a quick word to our sponsors? As you saw the scrolls running through the bottom of the screen, we've got our sponsors there: African Pride, PBS, and Aviculturist coming through there. And obviously, there we go, Aviculturist Exotic Exporters, Skulk. Thank you very much for your support. Edward Kutsia from African Pride, thank you very much for the assistance in getting this program up and running. AV Zandam, we're running the stream on their Facebook. And then we've got one more. There we go. Parrot Breeding Solutions. Skulk, thank you very much. So please support our sponsors. They're the ones that make it possible to host this forum. And there obviously will be a couple more going through the year. So, keep an eye out on that. Thank you. Back to you, Tony.
So, just a quick question. I'm getting, part of the reason why it's dropping is I'm getting tons of messages. Will the presentation be available online after we finish?
Yes, it will be on YouTube. It will be available there. It will be a recording on PASA's website. So it will be picked up and it'll be run the same as what we've done the other one. And what we also do on the WhatsApp group that we have, questions that are posed here and have not been where we don't have sufficient time to answer it, we'll post those onto that group as well for people to fall back and have a look on that. Yeah. So it will all be
Perfect.
recorded.
Perfect. Next. So as I was showing, we have the straw that we glue with crazy glue or with one of the strong glues. It pushes the upper mandible out. Next. Or sorry, let's go back. The other option is you would tape the beak into their proper position using a strong tape at night, so that and then you remove it by morning. That will also work just as effectively. Next. A common problem is deviated upper mandibles. People tend to feed from one side. Obviously, the right side is the correct side because it goes right into the crop, but you've got to be careful that you align the beaks when you feed so that you don't literally push the upper mandible in the wrong direction. Next. And what you see here is how I align it. I use my index and middle finger to push the bottom mandible, and then my thumb to align the top mandible uh, so that they're aligned, and then I just feed. That will prevent that problem. We also use deeper tubs because some chicks, when they're bored, they begin to pump on the edge of the tub, and that will also cause the beak to deviate. So as long as you raise the height, you won't permit that, and then you can resolve that problem. Next. When the crop is stretched, you use the next shaped piece of gauze or cloth, and we just pick it up so that it can digest. And if you do that for a few days and feed some chopped up nuts to give some muscular strength to the crop again, you can overcome the stretch crop. Next. Um, If the chick eats shavings, you can keep them on shredded paper. Although I will tell you that in most cases, when chicks eat the shavings, it's because they're not getting enough fat in the diet. Look at the fat. Look at a husbandry failure rather than saying, oh, all the chicks have to be kept on mesh. It's not natural. So next, like that. You can use that, but it's not natural. I find that sometimes chicks, even from a young age, have worn elbows from rubbing themselves on the mesh. Next. When you're going to have future breeders, try to rear them with their own species. Um, Avoid imprinting. One of the problems that we have with African grays in the U.S. is everybody bred the species, everybody sold the chicks as hand reared, saying, well, when they mature and people don't want them, we'll get them back. Well, the problem is that these singly reared birds see themselves as a human extension, don't recognize another bird as a mate, and don't breed. And it's why the production of African grays has crashed to almost nil in the U.S. You've got to prepare your breeders, your birds, your babies for future breeders. If you flock them, if you let them experience being birds, let them develop as birds, they will be perfect breeders. Next. If you don't have their own kind, try to raise them with other birds, but keep in mind that you don't want to mix uh, cockatoos and African grays because of powder downs with other species, as many species develop an allergic reaction. Next. There, we isolate. We keep macaws, especially together. We keep other species together. We keep cockatoos and grays together. We will race them together, and there's no issues there. Next. Pet ownership is the fastest growing sector worldwide. Free flying is a phenomenon. I have to pause for a moment and say that something that's happening in Indonesia is very unsettling, and that's they take free flying birds and feed them only formula. Um, If people knew how many those birds die at 4, 5, 6 years of age, they would stop that nonsense. Give the birds food. You don't have to starve a bird to get it to respond, and you don't have to change it from a good diet to a liquid hand rearing formula for its life in order to get it to fly. Please stop that. You're killing a lot of macaws. At least 10 birds die there a week because the Indonesians are not listening and are practicing this, you know. And I'm bringing this point up because it is a constant problem that I get messages. Oh, my bird is crashing. Its crop is bloated. What do I do? Well, what were you doing? And then they tell me, oh, I've been feeding it formula so I could free fly it. You don't need that. Birds are free flown the world over, and they're not given formula. Next. Introduce birds that are going to become pets to other birds, to toys, to enrichment. Let them understand that they are birds that will become pets, not a feathered extension of the human body. Next. When we do this, when we train our birds to be birds, they are healthier pets, and far fewer end up in rescues as problematic individuals. Next. Hand-reared birds will rear their chicks. Here's 2 pair of galahs in my collection. They were parent reared. They were hand reared, and they have no problem hand rearing their chicks. Next. I often hear that hand reared birds always pluck, that they are a problem. This warped mentality or concept started with a gentleman in the Netherlands. I've seen pluck birds in nature, not in civilization, not because they were escaped pets, but in real nature. And there are 2 examples. So it happens just as commonly in nature as it does in captivity. It's just that in nature, many of these birds get predated. Next. Understand the risks, stay informed. PDD is a growing problem worldwide. Uh, there are no simple tests. There are no solutions that work. It is killing a lot of birds. Understand the risks. When somebody calls me and says, "All my birds are dying from PDD," and I ask about hygiene, it was poor. So the poorer the hygiene, the greater the risk of disease spread. Next. Papillomas are contagious. They're not curable, but you can put them under, you can suppress them by giving hot peppers to the birds every day and keep them isolated. It's highly infectious. So if you would have positive birds, you would keep them in another area. You would treat them as a separate collection, and you would feed them hot peppers. Next. Do cultures. You just don't grab antibiotics. Understand that there's antibiotics, antifungals, anti-amoebics. People think they can reach off the shelf and give the bird anything and it will work. Do cultures. Understand what problems are in your area. We know, for example, that if we have a bacterial problem in Florida, it's going to be Klebsiella because it is the element that we culture 86% of the time when a bird falls ill. We have that knowledge, so it allows us to use the proper antibiotic. Understand these things. You can't just buy something off the shelf or, Joe told me if I use doxycycline, it will work for everything. No, culture it. Have an understanding, and then you can better manage your collection. Next. The best site to collect samples of adults is a choana, which is a slit at the roof of the mouth. If there are hairs there, the bird is healthy. If the tissue has been worn and it has no hairs, then there's usually a bacterial or fungal problem. Culture the birds. We use the same swab. We do eye, choana, vent. So we're collecting 3 samples from the particular bird for analysis. Next. If you use antibiotics as part of your therapy, you will have problems. Sooner or later, you will have an outbreak of something that will be resistant to everything. I'm seeing that right now in many collections in Asia, where they so abuse antibiotics that the birds, when cultured, respond to nothing. Don't make antibiotic therapy part of your management. Make hygiene, a good diet, proper airflow part of your management protocol. Next. Know that antibiotics, when you abuse them, can cause problems that can be misleading. If you use a lot of enrofloxacin, Baytril, in eclectus, they shed their feathers pinched, very much like it would happen with sorcovirus. So, the birds are telling us this is not healthy for us. Use antibiotics judiciously and only when you have a real problem. Next. Aviculture is not dying. As I said, it is evolving. I thank all of you for joining me this morning. I hope I've shared some knowledge. I end with every day the birds teach me new things. So what applied yesterday may change and evolve tomorrow. Stay abreast, spend time with your birds, and you will be successful. So if we could go to questions.
You're going to put the question on. Okay, so thank you very much, Tony. We're going to have a few questions. They'll pop up on the screen. I'll just read them to you. And then we can just look at time in terms of how many we can take there while we're waiting for them to pop up there. Again, just a note to a word of thanks to our sponsors for making this all possible. And yep, that is the important part.
Yes, it's important that we recognize the people that support us, that fund us, and to buy from them. Don't buy from people that will speak through two sides of their mouth. Will say, "Oh, aviculture is bad. You shouldn't be breeding birds," but yet want to sell us formula. There is an American manufacturer that several years ago said, I don't approve of breeding, yet he sells a hand rearing formula. That's absolute hypocrisy. Don't support those people.
Okay, Tony, there we have from, I think it's Mian. Can you please explain how darkness in the nest box stimulates the male gonads and what sort of nest box material works best for this?
So I explained those points, but I'll reiterate. One, you add chunks of wood to the nest so that the birds have to chew and dig and kick out the excess nesting material. This bonds the pair. It gets them to go inside the nest. They work at it, and the darkness seems to have a stimulating effect. It's what happens in the wild. They don't get very, very important to induce breeding.
Thank you. Mr. Tony, what can feed red-tail cockatoos? I think if we could just translate that is, what can we feed red-tail cockatoos?
I am a proponent of vegetables, really no fruit, except birds, parrots have not evolved to eat the sugary fruits. I was in Siberia at one point, and I popped a wild apple in my mouth, and I thought I was going to die. Are literally packets of sugar. The birds have not evolved to eat these elements. So I feed vegetables, I feed pellets, and I feed some seeds. I would give, for example, red-tailed black some almonds. They require a little bit of fat, and it's very important to them to induce breeding. Give low protein, and then you do a dramatic boost the fat with diet. There's a lot of videos on this on Tony Silva Aviculture. It's a YouTube place where I hang some of these videos, and I talk about that at length. To get into it now and to give examples would take us another hour.
Polyoma virus, can it be caused?
So polyoma usually occurs in chicks before they fledge. But test exclude infected birds. Unfortunately, what I see often is that people go ahead and just mix the chicks. They start a problem and they sell them. Don't pass your problem on to someone else. Deal with it and resolve it, because by shifting it to someone else, you're just infecting another aviary and you're not solving the root cause. Exclude infected birds from your collection. There are testing labs. The greatest investment you can make is in proper testing of your collection. Next.
Is boiled
So we
eggs and
feed
bread?
whole wheat sprouted bread to our macaws with peanut butter or almond butter. Um, I try to give every bird a treat so they come forward. I can see them. And you can use egg. It's not a standard element in their diet, but you can use it as part of a soft food that would include whole wheat bread, egg, grated carrot. Um, you can use wheat germ, make this into a crumbly mix and give it to them. And it's a good egg food for parent rearing chicks, or it's a good stimulus for breeding, for inducing breeding. Next. I don't understand. So they've got 70 conures 7 months ago and they haven't laid. With conures, I'll again get back to the diet, put them on a low fat, low protein rich seed diet, feed them only that for 3 months, fill the nest boxes up with wood, and then at the end of 3 months, you switch over to um, lots of vegetables. You give a richer, more protein rich and fat rich diet. And if you do that, they will all go to nest. The darkness again stimulates them. Conures are constant chewers. That will stimulate them. Next. So the conure probably has Klebsiella. Usually, when it gets that advanced, it's shaking. It is too late. So, when you start seeing frayed feathers, when you start seeing neurological, don't wait. It's not going to go away. Address it and make sure you use an antibiotic that penetrates the brain barrier. To my knowledge, there's only one, and that's cephalotoxin. Next. So the water bowls and the feed bowls are cleaned daily. The cages are pressure washed constantly. Next. So we like to use, I think F10 is a fabulous product because if the birds drink it, they don't die. You can use diluted bleach. Um, you can, there's many of them available. I really, really like F10. I think it's very effective. Unfortunately, it's not widely available. And if you have a walk-in aviary and you create a puddle and the birds drink it, they're not going to die like they would if they drank bleach water, for example. So when babies start chewing their feathers, I ask, do you give them enrichment? Do you give them something to do? They're learning, they're exploring. Throw things in for them to chew, to destroy. Branches, green coconuts that you split in half. You need to change the focus from themselves to playing as a group in their environment. Why are the feathers remaining? I would look at it's not normal. Hormones regulate the molt. I would definitely test those birds for circovirus. I would look at diet. I would look at housing. Maybe your light is incorrect, and the birds do not have a proper cycle. If you keep birds indoors, understand that they need natural light, a replacement for natural light. Next. So I think that inbreeding can cause many things: blindness, deformities, um, chicks that die very easily that are immune compromised. Though I find, interestingly enough, that the tolerance for inbreeding is quite high in parrots. When you look at Spix's macaws, many of them come from a single male that was very productive. So, you try never to inbreed, but, one or two generations are not going to show deleterious effect.
Okay. And then last one there, Tony, how to buy your books in Pakistan?
So Psittaculture, I believe, is sold out. I need to work on an expanded, revised edition. So I would check with the publisher. It's info@novaexota.eu, NOVAEXOTA, info@novaexota.eu, and see which ones are available. But they are gone. People often ask me about a PDF. I don't mind sharing PDFs, and I didn't mind having a book in PDF until I saw one of my books that somebody took, changed a bunch of the text, and changed his name, and gave himself as the author. Give me credit for what I've achieved, and don't steal my information. And if you're going to steal it, and you don't want to give me name, that's fine. Just don't change the facts. Don't insert your views when you have no knowledge into my book. So
Okay.
that's why there's no PDF available.
Thank you, Tony. And it's much nicer read to have a book in your hand. Maybe I'm just a bit old school.
Yes,
so,
I am the same.
So, yeah, thank you very much. There are still plenty of questions that are out there. We're going to have a look to compile a list of them and then get them through to Tony, who can give us some answers on that, if you don't
Yes.
mind. And then we can
Thank
just
you.
post
I
them back on that
apologize
group.
for shortening this. As I said, I had caught a RSV virus. I've been very sick for the past 6 months. I finally had surgery, and then it went great. And then I caught a rhinovirus, a cold, simply because I have two windows in my sinuses, and because they're open, I was more susceptible to viruses. So
Sure.
just talking is a huge stress. I thank everyone for joining us. Let's share information, question the source of the data. Today, everybody is an expert on in the internet. I see people making formulas that have never bred anything. I see people sharing dietary information that just blows my mind. They don't understand birds. Question, ask them. I have people challenge me all the time saying, well, what gives you the knowledge? And I go back and I explain to them, be careful where your information comes from.
So,
I again
Tony,
thank the supporters. I work closely with Vercelli Laga. It's a product that I use in Florida, and I thank them for making a great formula. It's what we use for all species, even for palm cockatoos. We just add the chopped nuts and chopped vegetables.
thank you. So just one or two points that I'd like to just come back to there is the one you mentioned is the beak and feather that we as a avicultural fraternity need to get together and look at doing enough research to find the solutions to that problem. I think it's a big threat. We had the webinar a month ago where we had a few of the people doing research on it, and I think that is something that we need to pursue. And then I think most importantly, Tony, I had a breeder say that he won't attend these type of meetings because he's been breeding birds for 30 years and nobody can teach him anything. And I think the message out of here from you is clear in the sense that you're never too old to learn. As you say, everything is developing, things are changing. We can get into a rut or a bad habit without knowing it, and if we don't attend these type of forums, we don't get the nudge in the right direction or that little bit of help. So thank you very much for that knowledge. And then we're going to give everybody just a minute to make sure that they've hashtagged PASA to get an entry into the chance of winning that wonderful book of yours. So if you just going to run that there from our production side.
So
And
while
as
you're
soon as-
doing that, let me just end up with a comment.
Okay.
There is legislation across the world that wants to extinguish us. It is from AR groups that don't believe you should even own a puppy. You know, we need to come together as a community and fight. A recent event happened that gives me some hope. I had lost all hope of the U.S., and the new administration has cut all the funding, which was millions of dollars, to HR groups to be very vocal against animal keeping. In fact, at the last CITES meeting that just occurred, the U.S. was not allowed to put forth all kinds of crazy proposals. So we need to fight, and we need to use our vote, and we need to be very vocal. If we do not, this will happen. Europe is facing many challenges on bird keeping. Many of the U.S. states are facing legislation from people that are unhappy with themselves and don't want anyone else to have a pet or be happy. Stay informed and fight.
Thank you, Tony. And yes, PASA was at that CITES meeting last week, and will be attending the COP20 meeting in November to put forward our case as breeders. And please support your local authorities and your local people to make sure that the interests of our hobby is well looked after.
I think, and I will end it here. When you look at the African gray, South Africa was breeding, and I'm going to round figures, so about 70,000 chicks a year. The World Parrot Trust decided that they were going to push to list the species on Appendix 1. Well, what they did is they shifted the focus from captive bred chicks to wild birds. Rather than helping, they sparked trapping to a level that had never been seen before. Rather than saying, let's stop the trade in wild birds and let's encourage captive breeding, their whole attitude was all inclusive and let's stop bird breeding. You know, support groups that defend your rights, support companies that are aligned with your thought process. You know, I have a bird under my care that was fed one of these, you know, fabulous formulas and fabulous diets. The bird is a mess. You know, and simply, and then when you look at the formula and the manufacturer, you know, his attitude is you shouldn't breed birds. I'm opposed to it. Well, if you're opposed to bird breeding, why are you producing formulas that take our dollars, our euros, our rand, our rupees, our rupiah, whatever currency, our Singapore dollars? Why are you, if you're so opposed to what we do, why are you, trying to sell us your product?
Yeah, agree 100%. Thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to roll the dice on that draw for this book of Tony's. So if our production team will run it, and then we can see who is the lucky winner of that. And are you making everybody happy? That was an April Fool's joke. So let's have a look. We'll run it again. Obviously, with our production from PASA running, it's also in that competition. Run it again. Okay, Eleanor Collitz. I'm not sure where you're from, but well done. We will be in contact with you that we can get the book to you. Thank you very much. Tony said that he would assist us in trying to get a page autographed and signed that we can send along with the book.
Yes.
Unfortunately, he is a little bit far away and the book is with us. So we will get that off to Eleanor. Thank you very much. And again, Tony, thank you for your time and appreciate your willingness to always take questions. I had a cold beer with somebody last night and they were saying, you know, they popped you a message on Facebook with a question. And he says he nearly fell off his chair when you responded, because he's just a beginner. He's been in the business for 2 years, and he was so surprised that somebody with your experience, knowledge,
out of principle. Yeah, I respond to everyone. and I don't mind donating my time to aviculture. I don't charge for it, but all I ask is people to be patient. If I don't get to their question today, I will get to it tomorrow. There's nothing that gets me to go crazier than having a question and an hour later a question mark. 2 hours later, another question mark. Understand that I have my own birds, my family, my job, and that I don't charge for my services. I donate my time to aviculture. All that I ask is for a little patience.
And we appreciate that, and we will make sure that we are patient. So thank you very much. Have a good day further, and we hope that your condition improves so that you can go and do your visit after the seminar.
Thank you very much. Have a great one.
Thank you to everybody for joining. Really appreciate it. You people that attend these seminars make it worth our while, and it makes the hard work behind the scenes worth it as well. So look out for the next one. It should be around the middle of the year. We're talking about June, July. It's also going to be an interesting one. So thank you very much, and a good day to all.
Thank you.